of each, right?
And we're recording.
Thanks. Okay. Before we get started, if everyone could please mute their devices unless they're speaking. We do have questions at the end, so please hold any questions that you do have until the end. And just a reminder that this conference is recorded and it will be made available on the city's website. I am sharing my screen. Hope everyone can see the agenda. Before we get started, if you're on the call, if you wouldn't mind announcing yourself, stating your name and your company, you can get a head count of who's here. It looks like we do have Dan Taddick, city engineer, on. Chris?
Yeah, I'll jump on, Holly, sorry. Dan Taddick, city engineer, city of Sandpoint. I'll let Chris introduce himself, and then maybe Holly, you could call on them individually, maybe just to say what organization they're representing.
Yeah, Chris Horgan, JB Engineers, part of the design team here, specifically parts 7 and 8.
Okay, I see participants now. I was like, do we only have 2 people on here? But I see more. It looks like we have Mara. Do you mind introducing yourself? And next, it looks like we have an 812 number.
On the chat log, Holly, it looks like we have Mara saying she can't hear. She has no audio. Shem Johnson said it's Edith Barlow filling in for Shem, representing SNL Underground.
Okay, is there anyone else? Either chat or... Okay.
This is the 812 number from earlier is Breck Vinson with BLD Services. We're a cured in place lateral lining company.
Thanks, Brett. Okay, before we get started, I'll just do like a quick overview of what we'll be discussing today. I am sharing my screen, looking at the bid meeting agenda. We're going to start with introductions, briefly go over the scope of work, talk through schedule, go over bid requirements. We'll go highlight a few of the supplementary conditions, take a look at the bid form, go over special provisions, briefly look at our drawings, and then we'll open it up to questions. Again, please hold any questions till the end.
Here we go.
Okay, we'll get started. Introductions. My name is Holly Ellis, construction manager with City of Sandpoint. My contact information is on the screen. Also on the call, Dan Taddick, the city engineer, City of Sandpoint. We also have Melissa on the call. She's the city clerk with City of Sandpoint. From our design team, we have Chris Horgan, the project engineer with JUB. Okay, we have a little note here about the owner point of contact. Owner will assume all duties and responsibilities of engineer and have rights and authority to assign engineer and contact. So what that means is that I'm your point of contact as the construction manager. So any coordination goes through me. We're checking submittals, RFIs, and those sorts of things. Scope of work. We'll go into more details on the scope of work, but this is just a brief summary. The project can be summarized into include trenchless rehab of approximately 100 private laterals.
I think we may have lost Holly on the call, so we'll let her sign back in here. The wonders of modern technology, I guess.
Hopefully we can do these in person here soon.
I agree.
Dan, I'm gonna go ahead and pause the recording for now.
Okay.
I assume.
And we are recording.
Okay, so the project can be summarized to include trenchless slough rehab of about approximately 100 private mains. And the project is located in Sandpoint, Idaho. Generally, the rehab is approximately 1,379 linear feet of 4-inch and 1,967 linear feet of 6-inch diameter sanitary sewer lateral line. Installation of approximately 53 sewer service cleanouts, replacement of approximately 101 sewer service connections to the sewer main line, surface repair, and other items of work. Estimated cost, $600,000 to $1.25 million. Prevailing wages do not apply. Buy America does not apply. City of Sandpoint is not maintaining a panholders list for this project. Dan, anything to add on scope of work? We'll dive in a little more later.
No, I think you covered it well there.
Okay, we'll take a look at schedule. Bid opening is scheduled April 27th, 2 p.m. Deadline for bidder questions is 3 days prior. These must be submitted in writing to Cheryl. Her contact information is listed. Her email is chughes@sandpointidaho.gov. Deadline for substitution requests is 5 days prior to bid opening. Anticipated City Council approvals May 5th. Notice to proceed is May 17th. Substantial completion August 30th. Beyond that, liquidated damages are $1,000 per day. Final completion September 30th. Beyond that, liquidated damages $500 per day. Getting into bid requirements. I'll highlight a few things here, but it's important to look at the instructions to bidders and make sure everything is followed. So there is a bid form that is required with bid. We'll take a look at that a little later and go into more detail. Bid bond, 5% of the bid amount is required with bid. State of Idaho Works contract license number is required on the bid form, and there is a space for it, but make sure that it's included. Naming of subcontractors form is also required per bid Idaho Code 672310. And just a little note here, bidders must submit a price on each item of the bid schedule, and the owner reserves to reject any bid, including without limitation, non-conforming, non-responsive, unbalanced, or conditional bids deemed in the best interest of the city. A few supplementary conditions to highlight. Again, these are just the highlights. This first one here is on work hours. So work hours are listed here from 8 to 6. And I'll also highlight that this work is performed in a residential neighborhood. So we asked something we want to be mindful of throughout the project. This next item here, the contractor shall apply for and procure an Idaho state plumbing permit for each sewer lateral to be rehabbed on private property. The permits must be applied for prior to conducting any work. Again, that's for the private property sewer rehabilitation.
And Holly, I'd just add one thing. Based on conversations with the state plumbing inspector, you can apply for all of those permits at one time if you would like. That can all be applied for initially out of the gate. But obviously the inspections need to be scheduled more closer to when the work is actually happening. But as Holly indicated, the work be in the right of way, say if the lateral only includes the connection at the main to the property line, that does not require a plumbing inspection or permit from the state of Idaho.
Thanks, Dan. This next piece, contractor shall obtain a City of Sandpoint business license. Contractor shall submit written cost reduction proposals that modify plans, specifications, or other contract documents. And the last piece to highlight here is contractors shall follow Idaho Standard for Public Works. It's the ISPWC 2020 edition, except where changed and or modified in the contract. So just a few pieces there to highlight. This next piece is our bid form, and I'll hand it over to you, Chris, to kind of talk through this portion.
Okay, great. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. I see thumbs up. Perfect. Yeah, so like Holly said, I'll take a quick spin through the bid schedule here, and then we can talk about some of this in a little more detail when we get into part 7 here in the next section. So bid schedule, obviously, these are the items, unit price items that we're planning to use as the basis of payment for this project. So if it's not here, it's incidental to the items listed here. So just kind of keep that in mind, kind of looking through this. The first 3, we've got kind of our standard lump sum items: mobilization, traffic control, sediment control, exploratory excavation per each. There are very specific instances defined in the contract about when that bid item applies. I'll touch on that here in just a second. But take a look at those so you understand when those happen. Get down into our cleanouts and our service line. As Holly mentioned, that's really kind of the crux of the project here, getting those replaced. Cleanouts are per each. Sewer services are linear foot, and that linear foot is based on a defined length in part 8 of the contract documents. The lateral replacement schedule has a defined length for each service line. And that is the basis of payment. And I guess I can mention it here. We have a few of these laterals that aren't getting a full replacement. There's a couple that just have some small segments that need to be replaced. So the basis of payment for that lateral is just the piece that needs to be replaced. So if your selected method of construction requires that you put in a little more on either side to complete that repair, that additional piece is incidental. So again, take a look at part 8 to see kind of what the basis of payment is for each lateral. Connections to manhole and main line, that's where we're getting the lateral, obviously connected to the sewer main. Those are per each. We have a few services we're capping and abandoning per each. And then finally, just some post-construction main line cleaning and CCTV. So again, and I'll mention it as we go through part 7, but some things that are not in that bid schedule: surface repair, excavation, backfill, those sorts of things. Those are all incidental to the items that are in there. So. All right, jumping into part 7 here. So special provisions, this is where we get into kind of the technical specs here. I'll just try and point out a few paragraphs that we think are important. I'm sure everyone's going to read the entire thing, but if you don't, maybe check these paragraphs here. So trenching, section 301, I've got a few things called out here, some different paragraphs, 31A, 34H, and 312. Those all define the allowable excavation limits. So in this project, a full-length open cut for the service line replacement is not allowed except as specifically defined in this section. So there are some very specific instances where that full-length open cut is okay. Otherwise, we have limited the amount of excavation that is allowed for this project. So please take a look at those instances where it is and is not allowed, and then what the allowable excavation limits are. And then we're trying to retain and protect all the trees here, so we want to eliminate excavation within the drip line. As I mentioned above, yeah, you can keep scrolling there, Dan. Paragraph 4.1 talks about payment. Trenching is incidental to those other bid items, whether it be cleanouts or sewer service line. Section 303, exploratory excavation. Again, some very specific instances where that is called for and paid under the contract documents. Otherwise, any sort of exploratory work that you want to do is incidental. So take a look at that paragraph to see when that's allowed and when we expect to pay for it. So Division 500 sewer. So that's kind of what we're up to here. Obviously, Section 503 cleanouts, paragraph 21A talks about the materials of construction for cleanouts, and then 401 talks about payment. Again, things like excavation, surface repair, any sort of bypass, those are all included in the pay item for the cleanout. In other words, they're incidental to that item. We're not making separate payment there. Section 504, sewer services. I put in bold here, paragraph 1.1. So the intent here, we're replacing these laterals and we are trying to get I&I, inflow and infiltration, out of the city system. So that is key to this project. And so everything we're looking at, we want to make sure that it's watertight and that it meets pressure and leakage testing as defined in ISPWC and Idaho State Plumbing Code. So just keep that in mind. That really is our goal here, is to keep that clean water out of the city system. Moving along, paragraph 2.2, F and G, those define the couplings that are allowed. So we've got some specific service line to main line connections, and then also some lateral to lateral couplings that we've allowed here, again, to try to meet that intent of being watertight. So please take a look at that list of those allowable fittings. 3.2A, so again, we've limited some of the excavation here, but again, it's up to the contractor to decide which method you'd like to use to do this work. So you can, again, some various ways in here, but that's up to the contractor. 3.3C4, connections to the CIPP main line. So many of the main lines in this neighborhood, in this basin, have been rehabilitated with CIPP. So some of these service connections are going to be to that cured in place. We want to make sure we get a nice tight seal on that liner. So this paragraph talks about what that looks like. Paragraph 3.8 talks about testing. Again, going back to our goal of being watertight here. So we want to test the service lines through the main line to the cleanout to verify water tightness. So again, want to keep the water out. And just a note that through the main line, we also want to make sure we are testing that main to lateral connection. In many instances, that is the weak point in these laterals. And so we want to make sure we get a good seal there. I think Dan mentioned it earlier, but the tests need to either be observed directly by plumbing inspector or owner. And I guess plumbing inspector, that would be specific to the work on private property. Let's see here, where am I at? 310, general approach for service inspection and installation. So kind of runs through sort of the steps that we would generally expect folks to follow as you go about replacing these service lines. Point out F and G there, pressure testing, again, trying to be watertight. And then item G, we need a post-installation CCTV video of each lateral. So again, we're getting mainline video, and then we're going to get lateral video as well. 312A1, maximum outage for service lines, 4 hours is the limit there. As Holly and Dan mentioned, this is a residential neighborhood, so we certainly don't want to knock folks out for days at a time, and certainly want to be sensitive to when they're going to be using their water and sewer. 313 authorization form. So any work on private property needs to have an authorization form. The city has copies of those and they can provide them. So no work on private property without that authorization form. 315 sewer service alignments. So we've shown them in part 8 in the drawings, kind of in an approximate fashion. We generally know where they connect to the main line, and we've showed them kind of perpendicular from there. That's just kind of a general location to give you a sense of where they might be. That's based on CCTV inspection from June of 2020. But again, as part of this project, you'll need to verify that alignment as part of the replacement. 316, allowable methods of construction. So again, this just talks about whether it's replacement or rehab, things like pipe bursting or cured in place lining, that sort of thing. Paragraph 318, a sewer service installation form. So there's an example of this form at the end of the special provisions. And really what this is a way to document the work that is done at each service. So the form has a spot to fill in the address and the footage of the service along the main line, what the service size is, what kind of work was done. Was it pipe burst? Was it rehab with CIPP? That sort of thing. And those are required to be turned in for payment. So if there's no service installation form, there's no payment for a lateral. So we'll get those filled out there. Let's see, measurement and payment there in section 504. Again, we're paying for cleanouts, we're paying for service lines, everything else incidental there. Things like backfill, surface repair, bypass, all that stuff. And then here, item 2, again, as I mentioned before, look at part 8 that defines the payment limit for a particular service and what the footage is. And then the sum of those footages in part 8 is what makes up the value in the bid schedule. 307, oh, I got that one a little out of order. Sorry about that. Is street cuts and surface repairs, talks about what we expect in terms of pavement. Miscellaneous surface repair, again, that is incidental to the other bid items, whether it's sewer services, cleanouts, whatnot. 509, 510, talk about cured in place pipe bursting, what we expect there in terms of material and installation. 512 talks about bypass. Here, again, we're working mostly with laterals, but obviously some interaction with the main lines. So needing to plan for that is necessary. And then sewer cleaning and CCTV talks about kind of what we want to see there in terms of that cleaning and CCTV after work is completed. So, and a note on that CCTV payment, the main line is paid in the bid schedule, but the actual video of the lateral is incidental to the lateral item. Whew, all right, part 8, drawings. So kind of 3 main components here. You've got the lateral replacement map book. So that gives you a visual sense of where the sewer main lines are, where the laterals are, kind of what the distance is along the main. Each map book has a page number, so P1 through 14 or 15, I don't remember off the top of my head. And then that corresponds with the next section, which is the lateral replacement schedule. So this replacement schedule is where we define distances along the main line, what size the service is, what kind of work we expect to be done. And again, this is where we define that length that's the basis of payment for each service. And at the top of each of those replacement schedule pages, you'll have a pipe number and a map number. So that map number corresponds to the page on the lateral replacement map book. So in my example here, I've got map book page P1 and I've got map number P1, which will show pipe P1. So take a look at those. That'll sort of help you keep track of where you're at as you flip back and forth between the 2 sections. And then lastly, just some standard details at the very end here. So backfill and surface repair. We've got a detail for a sewer service tapping saddle on CIPP mains. Again, as I mentioned, we've got some of that CIPP here, so we want to make sure we have a very tight seal on that. And then some city standard details for concrete, sidewalk, curb, gutter, that sort of thing. So there you go, parts 7 and 8, bit of a whirlwind, but I think those are the parts we think are important.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
At this point, we'll open it up to any questions.
Yes, this bid has 3 different methods of trenchless. How does that work? Will it be all pipe bursting, all CIPP, depending on who has the lowest bid?
We expect that it would be up to the contractor. Likely they would have one method. But
Okay, so you'll pick one method.
well, whatever the bids are and whatever the contractor comes in, whatever their expertise is.
Mhm. And whatever the lowest bid is, and then whatever method that contractor chooses, that's what you'll go with.
Chris, is that your understanding, or are there,
I've never seen a bid
Yeah.
written like this, so I'm a little confused.
Yeah, so that is the intent. So the again, the contractor is responsible to determine which method they want to use here. So if I guess I suspect that each bidder will kind of have their area of expertise, and that's where they will be kind of leaning on for the majority of these. But there's nothing in here that prevents someone from taking multiple approaches.
Okay,
Here.
all right.
So if someone had the ability to do both bursting and lining, then they
Mhm.
would. This is set up to allow both of those, and they could pick which one they feel is best for each different service. Again, like I
Okay.
mentioned, there are a few specific ones that require a full open cut. So, those obviously are not going to be burst or lined. So, they may be a little different from some of the others.
Okay, got it. All right, thank
So,
you.
Yeah, take a look at section 504 in part 7, sewer services. There's a lot more information in there.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
do we have other questions?
I have a few, none more important than the first one, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So with BLD, we don't have a huge presence out west. So we do not have an Idaho contractor's license. We're not past obtaining one. I guess I would like a little insight, if anybody's got any, as to what kind of timing that would require. Do we have enough time to obtain one of those prior to this bid, or any thoughts or insight there?
I can jump in there, Holly. I unfortunately cannot give a time frame since the city isn't obviously the entity, the state of Idaho, that issues those. I would encourage you to reach out to the state and get a sense of what that time frame might look like. We have little less than 2 weeks before bid opening, so obviously time is of the essence there.
For sure. Thank you. Any of these permits that we're required to, like the private property or the city of Sandpoint business licenses, are there fees associated with either or?
There's a $50 fee associated with the business license, I believe, and that can be applied for online on the city website. The state of Idaho, Chris, do we know if the state of Idaho, I would assume there's a fee associated with their plumbing permits?
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my head, Dan. There may be, but like you said, they do allow you to batch the requests, and so I think that may help mitigate that, but I don't know for sure.
And as far as the authorization forms, the city has acquired the authorization forms for the private property locations that require work on private property. So no issues associated with that. Obviously no fees associated with that.
Okay. The cleanouts that are listed on this project to be installed, are those necessary, or does the owner want those or require those? Or if we can install a lateral liner, I guess you're going to be testing these. So you're going to be testing each one of these. So you're going to need to clean out then. I've just answered my own question, I think.
Well, and I think based on the feedback from the state plumbing inspector, any work on private property, there must be a clean out. So if there's a clean out present already that is competent, you may not need to install a new clean out, but every lateral has to have a clean out if work is completed on private property. If we're staying within the right of way, we're not asking you to put in a clean out.
Understood. Thank you. Have these mains been previously lined with cured in place?
I can jump in. Yes, for the most part. If you look at the lateral replacement schedule in part 8, let me just check to make sure I'm not telling a fib here. Yeah, so each pipe in that lateral replacement schedule, there's a spot where we've indicated what the mainline material is. And so if it's CIPP, if it's been rehabbed, we've indicated that that is the pipe material there.
Gotcha. Thank you. Last question. The licensed plumber inspection, is that something that the contractor would have to schedule and pay for? Is that, how does that work? Has anybody got any insight there?
Chris, is that, I assume that's referring to the plumbing, the state plumbing
Yeah.
inspector?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, and again, I don't know that off the top of my head. Our plumbing inspections are through the Division of Building Safety. Is that right, Dan? Did I say
Yes.
that right? Yeah, Division of Building Safety. So, those folks could give you a sense of what that looks like.
Yeah, just to clarify, that the coordination and whatever payment, if any, would be the responsibility of the contractor. What we can't speak to is the actual cost, if any, for that inspection or those inspections.
Gotcha. Understood. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have other questions? Anything in the chat? I haven't looked in a while. It doesn't look like it.
I responded to one on there about the agenda, that the agenda would be posted with the video link on our website.
Well, if there's no more questions, we can adjourn.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.